Hey, good morning. It's the first Tuesday of the month, and you know what that means. That's right. It means another edition of Shelter Scriptology with one of the top real estate professionals here at Keller Williams in town. Today, we're joined by Vickie Severcool, one of the top producers not only here in the office, but in all of Atlanta. Licensed for over 20 years, Vickie has seen this city grow and change in her time here. With over 95 of her business being repeat and referral, she has left scores of satisfied customers in her wake. A quick review of her client experiences show a realtor who not only works hard and fast for her clients, but also takes the time to listen and help her clients truly step into the next phase of their lives. Last year, I was lucky enough to sit in on a couple of the voluntary sessions she helped organize so the office could realize their potential through practice conversations. And when I was looking for the next person to help us here, she was the natural fit. Every industry has top producers, but not many of those producers are willing to share their success with others. And it's this commitment to growth that sets Vickie apart in every way and makes me happy to welcome her to Shelter Scriptology for February 2025. Good morning. How's it going?
Good morning. Wow, that sounded great.
I told you it's a little overwritten. I overthink these things, but I do want to make sure that you know that we appreciate the time you're spending, the effort you're putting forth out there, and that we've already looked at and seen and recognized kind of your commitment to this, which is one of the reasons we reached out in the first place.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. That's really sweet. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. As I did mention in my overwritten introduction, you're an outspoken proponent of the power of scripting and preparing yourself for conversations. Over the 20-year career, how have you found this impacting your preparation to be on your business?
Yeah, sure. So, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. This is a lot of fun. I've never done this before, so it's really exciting. First of all, I want to just state that I think of scripting more as simply preparing for conversations with my clients. It's really not about memorizing the lines. It's more about being confident and clear when answering their questions. And I really had to shift my mindset around this because I was really in the beginning uncomfortable with the whole scripted idea. So and then what I realized too is by hearing the same questions from my clients or the same concerns from my clients repeatedly, knowing how to effectively communicate the answers to them actually was scripting, and then just practicing that. I call it something a little bit different. Helps my mind, helps my mindset.
Was there like a road to Damascus type moment where you went from, oh, this is how I've always done things, to scripting and preparing these conversations is going to make me more effective? For example, for myself, one of the things I noticed when I was writing the same email over and over, I could just make this a signature. Was there like a moment, or was it just kind of a considered look at your business and saying, oh, I can be better prepared for X, Y, and Z?
Sure. Yes, there was a moment back in 2008, 9, 10, when we were going through the Great Recession. My business, like so many, was really struggling. And I was questioning, what am I doing and why am I here? Or is this really where I need to be? And I had a team leader at the time see me struggle and said, hey, I want to help you. Have you considered focusing on one aspect of the business? We said expireds or for sale by owners, or one aspect, and went really deep with it. So I chose expireds. I created, with the help of her, a script that I was comfortable with, and I practiced it every day. And I also practiced the questions that I would get on the other end of the phone and how I was going to answer that. So I had my objections already set out, and every morning I would wake up and I would have my script along with all the objections that I knew that I was going to be faced with that day right next to me. And I just followed along. And as I kept saying the same thing, it just became more natural, and it worked. At the end of 2010, when I thought I was going to leave real estate, At the end of the year, I gave it another year, and 50% of my business came from those expired phone calls, and the other 50% came from my sphere. So it's learning those scripts and practicing them kept me in real estate.
That explains why you're such a big proponent of it. Like, it's one of those things. And the cleaning lady's leaving.
Dogs are barking. Yes.
Right on cue. But that's a fascinating story, because I think for so many people, it's something that they slowly incorporate. But you had that moment where you were like, I've got to make a change, or I won't necessarily be in this industry anymore.
Yeah, I decided I needed to be all in and see what would happen, or I just needed to get out. And so I was all in. I just, yeah. And
one of my favorite phrases, and the way I look at things, is that when you have boundaries, it allows you to be more free to color within those boundaries. Like, if you give me a notebook with a bunch of colored pencils, I'll freeze. But if you give me a coloring book and say, hey, use these lines to make the images whatever you need them to be, that, and paradoxically, gave me more freedom to be better at my job. Did you see kind of that same outcome as you incorporated the scripting practice into your daily routine?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I could probably recall the script. Hi, my name is Vickie. I'm with Keller Williams Realty, and I specialize in homes that haven't sold previously. I'd like to have a conversation about what I can do differently to get your home sold. I mean, that was my script.
Yeah.
And it was, some variation of that, but I can't even believe that I could still remember that.
No, but it's the foundation from everything that you built out from there was that initial script. I think that's really powerful and very instructive to show how it's still stuck with you 15 years later. I want to talk about kind of, you spoke to your initial resistance or fear. Some of the things I hear from people when they talk about scripting is, I don't want to sound robotic. I don't want to sound practiced. I'll say this about you, reading your reviews and even talking to you every time we've spoken, you can feel the personal touch. People who read your reviews, they talk about the level of care you bring with you to each transaction. How have you been? Is it just practice makes perfect? How have you been able to kind of soften some of those edges around what people think are rigid, hard scripting lines?
Well, first of all, I listen. And I don't always know what to say. I don't always have the right thing to say, so I might sometimes go into a scenario and I listen and I walk away and I have to come back to them and, hey, I've given this some thought. I hear what your concerns are. What if, and maybe I've come to you and I've said, hey, listen, I've got a client and we're struggling here. How can I help them? How can I help get them over this hurdle? So that's the approach that I have taken. When you're in a situation over and over and over again, it's the same thing, and you're getting, then that, like calling expireds, or if you're an open house person and you're going to do open houses, every weekend, taking the time to really hone in on and listening to what people are saying and what their struggles are helps you really bring solutions to the table. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
No, beautifully. It's one of those things that, like, if you're really being a good steward of your client, they're going to tell you how to sell to them. They're going to communicate to you what their concerns are. But the number one part, and I think I want to just harp on this for a second, is the listening. Because I think people hear, oh, I'm scripting, so this is how the conversation has to go. You can't control the other end of the conversation. You can just be prepared.
That's right. That's right. And, I took bold 5 or 6 times. I have my trophies over here, and they did a lot of scripting practice in bold, and that was really helpful. One of the things that I did, I had a scripting partner, and we would call each other every morning, I think at like 7 o'clock in the morning. And for 15 minutes, we would take turns being agent and client, and we
Right.
would each, I would share, okay, this is who I'm calling today. This is what I could use some help with. Say I'm calling expired. So my partner would act like an expired, seller, and would throw three objections at me. We always did three so that we could
Nice.
handle getting the no. And then the other rule was we always won the appointment. So you left scripting, our practice together, like we won, we can do this.
Right.
We gave you the confidence to go into the office and start, dialing the phone. That practice, and I kind of miss it a little bit, I think, but that practice was really important. And I mean, we did it for a year, every morning. It was really one of the foundational pieces, I think, of getting comfortable with having conversations, I guess, scripted conversations.
Right. So just for the record, for anyone listening, we don't talk about the breakdown. I don't give her a rundown of the question I'm going to ask. But the next thing I had on my list was, if you are an agent or someone who's ascertained that scripting would help enhance their business, how did you find that scripting partner? Was it someone on your team? Was it someone who knew you personally? But how did you build that relationship? Because frankly, it's a very vulnerable time and thing to be able to do, to say, I need to get better. I'm trusting you with my ability to get better. And I love the parameters you set out, where it's like, in the end, we're doing this to win. We're doing this so that when we do make those first calls, it doesn't feel foreign or like marbles in your mouth. It feels like you're hitting the ground running, having already a win under your belt.
Yeah. Well, at the time, I also came into the office every day. Like, that was one of my rules for myself, was be in the office, be around the energy. And so by doing that, you naturally start to connect and find that you're on the same kind of wavelength with some of the other agents. And from that, was like, hey, let's do this. You want to do this? And then you make a commitment and you stick to it.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So you mentioned you kind of missed that. How does scripting play a part in your business today? You've obviously been doing this for a while. You had your road to Damascus moment, if you will, in 2010. 15 years later, how does scripting still influence not just your day-to-day, but kind of as a backbone of your business?
So today, it does look a little bit different for me. So it has evolved, and it's more about staying informed with the market, and being prepared to discuss, the real estate trends and market shifts with my clients. So I'll tell you, I mean, one of the simplest things that I do is, almost without fail, there's a few times I can't make it, but I'm on the weekly industry update that Brett holds for the Heart of Atlanta group. And that really, every Monday, it's 30 minutes, and it gives me my talking points and the high level of, what's happening, so that I can go into conversations with my clients. And I'm knowledgeable. I know how to lead and guide them to making the best decision for them.
I think that's super important to remind people, because we both work in industries that are constantly shifting and constantly moving. The ball's always, you got to go to where the ball is going, not to where it is. Do you think that foundation allows you to be more flexible? The foundation of the scripting allows you to take on these changes and challenges and adaptations more readily?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does, because, I'm already hearing it from our leaders, right? I'm already hearing Rick talk how he would handle a conversation that comes up. I mean, they went through it this on Monday. I got a lot of great information on Monday.
Right.
So yeah, it's very helpful.
Vickie, are you telling me that 15 years into scripting, you're still learning stuff? Come on, Vickie, that's crazy.
Crazy, right? I love learning stuff. I love it. So yeah.
I think that's one of the things that makes this industry so unique, is that you have to have that passion for learning. And one of the good things Keller Williams does is it facilitates that. It puts, you're going to get out what you put in. More to the point, I kind of want to talk about the experience you had last year with organizing those conversation sessions or scripting sessions. I watched people come in and come out. How did you feel like that was impactful for the office? And kind of, I'm sure it helped you as well because you're hearing things from different sectors that you may not have been hearing on those Monday calls.
Yeah. What was really interesting about that, so back in when I first got into real estate, I've been licensed since 2000. And early on in my career, the state of Georgia made it a requirement that you have a buyer brokerage agreement in place to represent a buyer. Well, I knew then that this was going to be a career I wanted to be in for a really long time. And I don't know when that became a requirement, but I was only in the industry a couple of years. I started having conversations and having my buyers sign brokerage agreements then. It was just, right. I was like, this is the standard that I'm setting for my practice, my business. This is how I work, period. And so when all of this stuff was happening and we were seeing the industry kind of shifting a little bit, and there was a lot of fear out there.
Right.
When I started to understand what was happening and the changes that were coming down to the agents, I realized I've been doing this ever since I got my real estate license practically. These are not new conversations.
Right.
So I thought, how can I, help other agents to see that and be comfortable with this? Like, this is how really we've been doing business for years, right?
Right.
So yeah, I just started, wanted to do my part, create a safe space in the office for agents to come, share what their concerns are, share what they're hearing from their clients, and then practice together how to respond.
I thought it was really effective. I got to sit in a couple of times and I really enjoyed it as well. Before I let you go, I do kind of want to go over a couple of the scripts that I know you're so prepared for. One of them being not necessarily being the buyer brokerage, but kind of something where I'm seeing in the marketplace myself. I've got my own answer for it, but I want to see the agent side. So let's put you on the spot for a second. Every borrower has trepidations these days with the volatility in the rate environment, the uncertainty of what's coming next, kind of looking at a global look. What would you say to a client who has made this their pronounced and most chief hurdle towards making a purchasing decision?
Well, I totally understand why you'd want to wait for lower rates. There's been a lot of talk about rates potentially coming down, but the reality is we really don't know exactly when or by how much. What we do know is that prices historically go up. And in fact, prices have already risen year over year, roughly around 4%, in some Atlanta neighborhoods a little bit higher, but that's the typical increase in prices is roughly around 4%. So while waiting for lower rates, even though you think that sounds like a good idea, the reality is that buyers are getting priced out of the market as values continue to rise. The good news is that if rates do drop in the future, you always have the option to refinance, but you can't go back in time and change today's home prices. And then follow up with the question, right? Would it make sense for us to further explore your options now so that you're ahead of the competition?
And I want to just kind of take that for a second. I love what you did there because the very first thing you did was you validated your borrower's experience.
Every time. You have to validate them every time.
It makes them feel heard because there's nothing more as a person you want to feel than, oh, this person's actually listening to me. They may be the expert, but they're not telling me that I'm dumb. They're telling me, hey, what you're hearing is natural and it makes sense. Here's how I'm going to look at it as an expert in the field. And so then you're able to dabble in your expertise. And I know that there are some agents who might be listening who say, oh, I don't have 25 years of experience. What you do have is a level of knowledge, a level of history, a knowledge of history in the area, a knowledge of trends that you're bringing to the table. I think that, using that and being able to lean on kind of history and say, this is where we're going, this is where we've been, and this is how we're going to get there, allows the message to really be conveyed in a way that's going to make them receptive to it.
Yeah. And hop on the market industry update calls every Monday for 30 minutes. And soon you'll just be talking circles around me.
And then the last thing you did that I really enjoyed is there are two, my dad's an old salesman. He was one of the first 100 employees at MCI. Young people listening, MCI was a telecommunications company. He said people buy for two reasons generally, fear and greed. And you were able to kind of apply to both of those because you're like, hey, we don't know what's going to happen, but what we do know is that people are getting priced out of the marketplace. We can't have a time machine, so let's take advantage of the opportunity now. And I think that what that really does is it reframes the whole micro concern against the macro concern. Is you're not talking to me because you wanted a 3% interest rate. You're talking to me because you wanted a house. You're talking to me because something in your life required a change. And this is a hurdle to overcome to make that change. I like that, you brought the focus less off of the rate and said, hey, look, this is about opportunity. This is about growth. This is not why we started talking was the rate opportunity, was the chance to buy a home.
Yeah, if I can, sometimes I'll take it back to, something that I've actually experienced in the marketplace. Like, for example, and I've used this on one of my buyers this weekend, but last week I showed two buyers out showing houses, and sure enough, for both of these buyers, the house that they chose had multiple offers, and they were just like, what? So I will sometimes bring that into the conversation. Like, listen, there are still multiple offers happening out there, and
right.
I mean, I experienced it twice in 1 week. So bring in some of that experience that you're dealing with some of your other clients in real life scenarios to the table.
That's such a good piece of advice. Making it tangible and making it real for people can really take it out of the abstract of, oh, there's going to be a lot of people out shopping. And no, this happened this week where we were out shopping and this is how biddings are already happening. It shows that the spring market, as they say, is already here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what people, because everyone thinks, it's the WebMD effect. I've got WebMD, so I'm a doctor. I know that if this itches, I've got cancer. But at the same time, Google allows people to feel like they've been able to get a peek into the knowledge base that you've grown and that you've earned and that you've worked for. And so I think that the way that you're able to approach that and be able to, like you said earlier, anticipate the objections gives you more power and control over the situation and look, buyers don't want to be preached to, but they do want to be led. They do want to feel like they've got an expert in their corner. And that's one of the things that I love is be able to create that atmosphere of a team working together. Last question. This is a selfish one for me. When you've got a client who comes to you and says, hey, I've got a fantastic rocket mortgage pre-approval. And you're thinking to yourself, I've got these local lenders who are experts in the field. What's the language you would use to kind of redirect them or point them in a way that's going to make it easier closing for yourself, for the buyer, and for the seller?
Yeah. So again, that's great. Congratulations. Why don't we do this? I want to take what you've received from Rocket Mortgage, and I want to have one of my local preferred lenders, Daniel Palmer with Shelter Mortgage, take a look at it just for a second opinion. I have experience working with these types of, online lenders, and sometimes they can get a little bit rocky, and I really want us to have a fallback just in case it doesn't go as planned. Is that something that you're okay with? And I've already developed a level of trust with my client, so they most always say yes. They will always say yes.
And I love the framing of that question. It's not will you talk to my guy? It's, is this something you'd be okay with? Because no one wants to feel like I was being closed-minded in the transaction. No one wants to portray themselves as being shut off from opportunity. So of course they're going to say, yeah, I'd love to get a second opinion. And then from there, see, my answer is always, you don't want to be strapped to a rocket for your biggest decision. Like I have a little pithy little thing there, but I think it's important because so many people fit outside of those nice, tight little boxes that we all used to fit into 20, 25 years ago. Life is more complicated. There are more moving pieces, and you want to make sure that full picture is communicated to an underwriter.
That's right. That's right. And most of the time with an online source like that, they don't ask the right questions to know that piece of the puzzle. So you're not finding out until it's too late.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, Vickie, thank you so much. I'm going to be very respectful of your time. We're at the top of the hour. Do you have any last words for anyone who's going to be catching this later on or joining us here live?
I just, this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect, and I had a really good time with it. Thank you. And, I'm here to help. So if anybody, needs anything, please feel free to reach out.
I'm going to make that one of the clips because I think people hear about the learning at Keller Williams and like, oh, it's a great thing to sell. But one of the reasons I've enjoyed being in this office for the last year is because I've watched the true spirit of teamwork. I've watched top producers talk to agents who just got started, people who are maybe in a rut. The willingness to assist your fellow agents sets this brokerage apart. And I think that it's really important and beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, this business can be a lonely business. And especially when you're first starting, or even, it doesn't matter when. I mean, there's times where, I need extra support from the office or other agents or whatever. But yeah, it's just, especially getting started, it can be challenging because there's a lot coming at you all at once.
Vickie, thank you again so much for your time. Thank you everyone who tuned in. The recording will be out shortly. We'll put some clips out as well. If anyone has any questions, daniel.palmer@sheltermortgage.com. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.